Hello and welcome. Hello, my name is Anissa Antar, and thank you so much for joining us on this discussion, Moroccan cinema in the 1970s, with filmmakers Ahmed Maanouni and Ali Essafi, moderated by the esteemed Omar Berrada. This conversation is presented as part of Mizna's 2021 Twin Cities Arab Film Fest, which is taking place online and in person through today, Sunday, October 3rd. As I said, my name is Anissa Antar, and I am working with Mizna, which is a nonprofit arts organization that provides a critical platform for contemporary literature, film, art, and cultural production, centering the work of Arab and Southwest Asian and North African artists. For more than 20 years, Mizna has been creating a decolonized cultural space to reflect the expansiveness of our community and to foster exchange, examine ideas, and engage audiences in meaningful art. We were named City Page's Nonprofit of the Year in 2020 and a Regional Cultural Treasure in 2021. We published Mizna, an award-winning Swana Lit and Art journal. We produce this Arab Film Festival, and we offer classes, readings, performances, public art, and community events. I would like to thank our festival sponsors and funders who are listed on the festival page. We at Mizna always prioritize supporting our artists financially. Please consider supporting our work to help provide programming like this discussion by making a donation at mizna.org. Mizna stands in solidarity with all indigenous peoples and movements across the world. We recognize that in the place currently called Minnesota or Nisota, Makoche, we operate on stolen Dakota land. The Dakota people are the rightful caretakers of this land. We recognize that in operating on stolen land, we are complicit in the extractive settler colonial project that is the United States. This recognition is one of several actions we must take in dismantling local and global forms of imperialism and colonialism, from Turtle Island to Palestine to Western Sahara. Free Palestine, free Turtle Island, and Black Lives Matter. This discussion is being streamed live, and audience members can drop comments or questions into the chat, whether you're watching on Zoom or Facebook. So please use the chat function and we will get your questions to our participants. We'll have a little time for a Q&A at the end. I'll now be making introductions and then I'll turn things over. I'm so pleased to introduce the moderator of today's discussion, Omar Berrada. Omar is a writer, translator, and curator. He's the author of Clonal Hum, a book of poems on invasive species, and the editor and co-editor of several books, including Album, Cinémathèque de Tanger, a multilingual volume about film in Tangier and Tangier on film, The Africans, a book on racial dynamics in Morocco, and La Septième Porte, Ahmed Maanouni's posthumous history of Moroccan cinema. His writing has been published in numerous exhibition catalogs, essay collections, and anthologies, including Poetic Justice, an anthology of contemporary Moroccan poetry. He currently lives in New York, where he teaches at the Cooper Union. We are also so honored to be joined by the filmmaker of Trances, which is screening both online and in person at our festival, Ahmed Maanouni. Ahmed is a writer, director, cinematographer, producer, legend, born in Casablanca. His works include one of the most emblematic titles of Moroccan cinema, Eliam Eliam, the first Moroccan film to be selected at the Cannes Film Festival and grand prize winner at the Mannheim Film Festival. He caught international attention with Trances, or El Hal, which was presented by Martin Scorsese at the 2007 Cannes Film Festival. Eliam Eliam and Trances were both restored by the Cinema Foundation Project and have been included in prestigious collections such as the Criterion Collection and Eureka, the Masters of Cinema. His film Burned Hearts was the Grand Prix winner at the National Film Festival in Morocco, and it was awarded numerous international prizes. In 2007, he was also honored with the title of Officier de l'Ordre des Arts et Lettres in France. I'm also so pleased and honored to present Ali Essafi, the director of Before the Dying of the Light. Ali was born in Morocco, and he studied psychology in France before he entered the world of filmmaking. His works as a director include Général, Here We Are, The Silence of the Beat Fields, Ouarzazate Movie, and Chichat Blues, all of which have been widely screened on the International Film Festival circuit. When he returned to Morocco, he embarked on a lengthy research project examining the history and aesthetic of North African film and visual archives. He transformed his research into films and installations. His film, Crossing the Seventh Gate, is a portrait of Ahmed Maanouni, the late Moroccan filmmaker. The film premiered at the Berlinale in 2017. His most recent film, Before the Dying of the Light, which is screening also as part of this festival, premiered at IDAFA in Amsterdam in 2020. Thank you all so much for being here and welcome. Welcome to our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Anissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you to Mizna and the Twin Cities Film Festival. Hi, Ahmed and Ali. Nice to see you both. I'd like to thank actually the festival for giving us this opportunity of being together, even virtually, and talking to each other. It doesn't happen all that often. The main difference is maybe that if we had gotten together spontaneously, we wouldn't be speaking to each other in English. So, so let's hope that we can still have a spontaneous exchange in this strange language, and we'll see how we do. The session is about Moroccan cinema in the 70s, and I would say more generally Morocco in the 70s. The festival is showing one film by Ahmed Maanouni, Al-Hal, Trances, from 1981, and a film by Ali Essafi, Before the Dying of the Light, from last year. And also of Some Meaningless Events by Mostafa Derkaoui, a film from 74 that I hope we will get a chance to talk about a little bit. So it is a focus on the 70s. Perhaps before we start, I just wanted to say a couple of very basic things, facts, dates for those of you in the audience who may not be familiar with Morocco so much or the history of Morocco so much. Just to situate the period very briefly and say that Morocco gained independence in 1956 after 44 years of French colonization. In 61, a few years later. And Spanish, it's true, not just French. The King Hassan II inherits the throne in 61, and his reign becomes kind of authoritarian almost from the beginning. In particular, there's a very repressed demonstrations after a general strike or student demonstration in 1965. And this kind of mounting repression happens at the same time as a kind of mounting artistic and cultural activity. And if I were just to mention a couple of things, I would say that in 62, artist Farid Belkahia is given the directorship of the National Art School in Casablanca when he was only 28 years old. And in 1966, Abdelatif Labi and a few others found a journal called Souffle with this project of cultural decolonization, or of trying to reflect on what decolonization means beyond formal independence. In the early 70s, there will be two attempted coups against the king that have made repression even more stringent afterwards. I won't go into the details, but for instance, Souffle, since I mentioned it, gets banned in 73. Labi and many other intellectuals and activists go to jail for long sentences, etc. So this is our kind of moment. We're 15, 20 years after independence, and we're looking at difficult political context and an interesting artistic environment. And I think what's interesting in terms of this particular discussion is that the three of us, myself, Ali and Ahmed are from three different generations with regards to this. To speak for myself, I grew up in Casablanca in the 80s, so I haven't really known the 70s. I had no idea of what I just told you when I was a child. I grew up in a kind of non-political, middle-class family. So, but what I could sense growing up in the 80s in Casablanca is a kind of climate of fear in a way, like the fact that people would start whispering when they say the word police, for instance, and when they talk about politics. There are certain things that apparently had been made difficult to talk about or dangerous to talk about. So for me, it's the 70s growing up were a kind of sensed through the impressions they left on the adults around me. So my knowledge of it is more intellectual, came later. And so I would like to just ask our guests what they were doing in the 70s and what the 70s mean for them. Can you try and give us a sense of what 70s in Morocco meant for you, how you lived through it, any thoughts, images, or words that sum it up for you? And maybe start with Ahmed.
Thank you, Omar. Before going, through this, I just it's just a little piece. It's not important, but it's a little piece of disagreement about what I heard Anissa said about Western Sahara. It's a very itchy subject. I disagree with her, or with saying that it's the Moroccan Sahara is an entity that should be called Western Sahara. So for me, it's Moroccan Sahara. It is not the subject tonight or today, but I just wanted to speak about this disagreement. This said, I can answer your question. In the 70s, I was busy studying theater, studying first economics outside Morocco in Paris, then theater in Paris, then subsequently cinema in Belgium, and I was busy preparing my first film, Aliyam, and meeting other Moroccan filmmakers like Jilali Farhati or Regab, and the late Ahmed Maanouni. It was kind of boiling creativity going on in the the frame you just depicted. There was going on a lot of creation, and I was busy in that.
And so you were mainly in Europe or going back and forth?
I was going back and forth, staying, preparing Aliyam took me a long, it went on for maybe 2 years, going back and forth with my camera, with a still camera, and meeting people. And what is and Ali knows that it's documentary filmmaking is a school of modesty toward the subject, and the first thing you have to say to yourself or to assume is that you are ignorant, and in facing a subject, and this ignorance makes you move on, makes you take the path of knowledge. And this takes time. So this path of knowledge of the subject of Aliyam, which are the agriculture workers in farms in surrounding Casablanca, in order to be kind of from ignorant to expert, I had to go back and forth. It took several times. It took me almost 2 years to be able to just stand and say, now I can write, I can shoot a film about this subject without being, ignorant. Now I know.
May get back to that in a while. I wanted to ask Ali about the 70s for him.
Well, I think that my souvenir, my memory from the 70s is really just like the protagonist of and his family in my film. Let's say that I could be the little brother of Aziz in my film. So I was a teenager, and I was thrown in this story of politics and violence, because my old brother has the same story as Aziz, and it makes our life story back and comme on dit,
Upside down.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you say just a little more for people who have not seen the film, who have not seen Before the Dying of the Light, about what happened?
Yeah, this is what happened. It's when I was teenager, my elder brother was a leftist student, and he was caught by the police and disappeared for several months. We didn't know if he was alive and or died. And at the same time, my father was a policeman, so it was. I mean, it was a big revolution in the family, and all my story is impacted by what happened, and all my story changed, and I became an adult since this story, which happened in 75. So it's like a trauma, but trauma together with what I put in this film, with this boiling artistic and political movements, theaters, music. I mean, and we were surrounded by, as a teenager, I was, just to make the context, the story I'm talking about, my story, was happened in a small city in the middle of nowhere, where we didn't have nothing, marginalized region in the east of Morocco, close to the Algerian borders. Well, so I grew up in this 70s atmosphere.
Okay, I wanted to show the beginning of your film, Ali, actually, Before the Dying of the Light, if you don't mind. Just maybe a minute and a half. I will share my screen.
Voici les lieux, voici les hommes, voici le chant. Élargissez le cercle, que Dieu élargisse vos tombes. Que béni soit le poète et le conteur. Que notre chant soit digne de ceux qui nous écoutent. Année de la gazelle, année des sauterelles, année du sabre et du canon, année de la bonne saison. Notre sang garde la saveur de la légende.
troisième. كنديروا استجوابات اللي كنديروا على كل السينما وخصوص السينما المغربيه. شنو هذاك السينما؟ واش كنتوا في هذا السؤال ولا نظر ديال هذا السينما؟
Sorry, I have to find
How to stop
how to stop it. It went away. Give me a second. I apologize. Oh, here it is. Okay, sorry, we tested this. It was supposed to work. I wanted to show the beginning. You spoke a minute ago, Ali, about the main character of your movie, who is the living character whom we hear telling his story of an undercover radical political activist, basically, and the difficulties of that and the life and that life in the 70s. And that story coexists in the film with this other story that doesn't have a commentary, and that is kind of almost like a photo and video album of the 70s as you see it from the artistic point of view, right? And it starts here. We hear the voice, of course, which is the voiceover from Bouanani's Mémoire 14, Memory 14, and this kind of opening of the circle of storytelling, which inaugurates the film. That you used, and then we see these photos: the Sadiqi's theater troupe, the Casablanca School of Fine Arts with Bilkahia that I mentioned earlier, and Nas Al Ghiwan, the music band, which is the subject of Ahmed Maanouni's film Trances. A photo taken during the film shoot of Ahmed Bouanani's Les Quatre Sources, the Four Springs. A photo of Mostafa Derkaoui on set, since of Some Meaningless Events is also part of the program of the festival. And then these shots of kind of what looks like an organized library of film reels, but also an abandoned and you know, in a kind of decaying archive and library of film reels. So we get this sense from the very beginning of your film that the 70s were a story of groups, you know, all these group pictures in all the different arts. And then we get the sense that these images that we see are very precarious. You know, there's something that may have disappeared, that maybe it was difficult for you to find and to retrieve and to put together because the archives are getting lost. So perhaps I wanted you to say something about that, about the process of making the film, the process of assembling these images. What did it take? How long did it take? Where was this material? And what is your relation to it?
Well, thank you, Omar. Yeah, there is, in my opinion, two important points in my answer. First of all, it's about the archives, which, because all people don't know that the difficulties we have in Morocco and in North Africa and in a lot of post-colonized countries, the difficulties we have to get access to this patrimoine, to the archives, especially film archives and audiovisual archives. This I mean, when I started my journey in cinema, after 2 or 3 films, I discovered that I didn't know nothing about the history of cinema from the country where I came, and I felt myself like handicapé, like. I went to go back to the archives and to see what happened in Morocco in the generation before me, not only about 70s, but even what happened in the story of art, pictures. We didn't have any background. We don't have books, good research about that. It was before I discovered La Septième Porte, the history of cinema of Ahmed Maanouni. So there were nothing to. So it was too difficult to have access to the archives. It took me like more than 10 years just to have access to what I showed a little bit in this film, and part of those archives I couldn't have access till now. So it's really difficult. It was the most difficult part of this work, this research. And the second point, it's interesting because you when you present the beginning of the film, you put your finger on the storytelling, because Maanouni in Memory 14 start with this like a storyteller, popular storyteller in Morocco to tell the story of the collective drama. What I learned in my research, during this research, I found a very interesting beginning of research and experimentation in North Africa, like Ahmed Maanouni, who tried to put the tradition of oral tradition of halqa and storyteller in the cinema, into a narrative dispositive. So I make research that I'm publishing right now with the Sharjah Art Foundation about this experimentation through 3 films from the Maghreb, from North Africa. And I want to follow this experimentation of trying to tell the story in the way of the storyteller. So it's why I try to experiment this, putting Mostafa Derkaoui journey together with Aziz's journey. Like the storyteller, sometimes he starts the story and then he let it and he embarked the audience in a special other story with. So I tried this to follow this experimentation, and I hope with my research I'm publishing now to encourage many people, especially people from colonized, ex-colonized countries, indigenous from the United States, or all the people who don't have memory to try this experimentation, to tell the story with inspiring by the oral tradition.
This makes me think of a sentence that Bouanani quotes in La Septième Porte. Tous les pays qui n'ont plus de légende sont condamnés à mourir de froid. The countries who have lost their legends are condemned to die of cold. Ahmed, wanted you to speak, and I will share my screen again. I will take that risk for some still images this time. And I would like you, Ahmed, to speak about, this sense of collectivity in the 70s. You started speaking about it earlier. You spoke about Regab, Bouanani, Jilali, Farhati. And I'm interested in the link between that and this film, El Hal, Trances, the fact that you chose to do a film on Nasl Riwan, a band, a collective of musicians. What attracted you to them? I mean, they were very well known at the time that you made the film, of course, but what was your particular relation to them, to their music? What was, can you say more about the desire to make this particular film?
Well, the desire to make a film about, or the interest actually about Nasl Riwan started way before Aliyam Aliyam. I was a fan.
Just say perhaps that Aliyam Aliyam was your first film that you spoke about. It came out in '78, and
yeah,
and this one, Al Hal, came out in '81.
And in Aliyam Aliyam, the opening is the eponym song Aliyam Aliyam Fin Radibia by Nasl Riwan, and it's Harvey Batma's voice opens the film. As I told you, I was first a fan of their music. I got to meet them through friends, and we got connected. As I said, there was this feeling of, like a family. We belong to the same stream of modest culture. What they I had a teacher in the film school. He used to call it la culture du pauvre. I don't know how you could translate it. The
poor man's culture.
Yeah, and it's because in itself it's not a pejorative term. In itself, it has one of the greatest energy, which really nourishes the resilience in case of being under pressure. So Nasl Riwan they could express all our rebellion or our hidden desire to express ourselves. So it was natural that we could meet, we could exchange, and through my travels in Morocco, I met in several occasions, of course, Ahmed Maanouni first at Regab's house facing the cinema Lutetia in Casablanca, and we used to had this Homeric discussions about like if we were in some in the Latin Quarter of Paris or in Rome, or anyway, we were in Casablanca, but we had this cosmopolitan interest in culture. Of course, he was immensely feverish about having things done. He was at the core of many. I'm talking about Ahmed Maanouni, of many attempts of collective works. My status as living abroad, I unfortunately I could not obey to daily work with them, and that period there was no internet or WhatsApp or things that makes things easier to exchange. So, but he was kind of following my work, and each time I came back to Morocco, I had to see him or to visit him in his house in Rabat, and he would show me his work, and I was really very, very encouraged and happy of how he received Aliyam Aliyam. Being like you feel solitary in your work, and you find that in Amsur an artist, yeah, he was so supportive, and I dare say admiring, bluffed by my work and the things I dared at the time. What was your question? I don't remember.
My question is then to move. Well, you answered the questions. This is you at the time, I think.
That's right. Yeah. Now this is in 1980, shooting Trances.
Trances, yes, exactly.
In Tunisia. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was shooting the concert that Nasr Riwan did in Tunisia that features in your film.
And going back to the state of, as Ali mentioned, the state of our archives and of our films. I was lucky enough first because my films were not stocked in that place, cinema center. I had Aliyam Aliyam stocked in Eclair Laboratory in Paris, and Trances also. And the ultimate, good thing which happened to these two films is thanks to Isa Genini, who supported my work in Aliyam Aliyam and subsequently produced Trances, to be, like a fairy who made these films being shown in the States. Thus, they met with Martin Scorsese, and thanks to Scorsese, the films are now restored, and this is the fairy tale part of Moroccan archives.
Yeah. So to get to the film itself, I mean, this is a still from the film with Omar Syed, one of the members of Nasl Riwan, and a picture of Boujma, a former deceased member at the time. And he's asking you, so what do you want to know? Do you want to hear about my life, etc.? So I was interested in the way you worked with them, because as you said, you had done Aliyam Aliyam before, and it was a film that had a very, I mean, it's hard to name a film like that exactly of course it's documentary, but it's a lot more than that in a way. But in any case, it documents the everyday life of peasants outside of Casablanca. And you say in a text that you sent me recently, this very beautiful thing that what your work consisted in Aliyam was to try and reduce the enormous power of the camera, to try and not be imposing, not to let the power of the camera overwhelm the film and overwhelm the relationship with the people that you are filming. In the case of Trances, you are filming people who are, in some ways, they are powerful. They are well known. They're this band. They play in front of big audiences. But somehow what we see in the film is you show that, but you also show the simplicity of their everyday, right? And the neighborhood they live in, the life they lead, and all of that. So I just wanted to know how you dealt with that distance. What was the project? And I'll show a few stills where, to me, what struck me is both there's a kind of back and forth and often in parallel montage between the life of the band and the life of the city, in a way, especially Hay Mohammadi and all of that, like the life of working class Casablanca, in a way. And secondly, there is a back and forth also between the band as a performing band and the kind of these portraits of the different members. You know, there's a lot of close-ups. You know, each one of them gets a little section of the movie where we delve a little more into their personality, their life, and all of that. So maybe you can just say a little more about the structure of the film and what you were meaning to do.
Well, I followed the same path from not knowing to knowing, from ignorance to knowledge with Nasli one. Of course, before Aliyam, I met them. We were, we kind of could see each other from time to time, but I couldn't say that I knew them intimately, each one of them singularly. And I had this, this rigueur of I have to go each step by step to knowledge, to be an expert of Nasri one. So that means spending a lot of time together, following them in their tours, even the modest one in Taza, for example, and just having my notebook and pen and writing and noting everything I could hear and see. And when I sensed that I knew them really organically, I knew them as the performers, and I knew them also on the basic daily life, how they breathe daily. This led me led naturally to the construction of Trances, which is in terms of let's say dramaturgy is to show to show the performance on stage, and then what's behind the stage. And what's behind the stage is the daily life of each member. This way of going from the stage to the what's behind, not what's behind the curtain, but what's behind this image of the performer. You go to the real, his real life, his inspiration, his like for Larbi, for instance, even his obsessions or his nightmares or dreams, etc. I was happy, really happy when I saw much later Wim Wenders' Buena Vista Social Club, and I saw it's almost the same natural way of introducing the story, from the stage, the performers, to the just the daily life, and that's how it came with its with this freshness and this fraîcheur, not this. My producer Isa Genini left me an immense sense of freedom to experiment, to believe in my own fulgurances at the time, and it proved correct, because it's still that what catches even today, more than 40 years later. This is a true way of presenting without betraying, without exploiting, because I was not going to do another exploitation film on a group. I wanted to this privilege I had to know them. I wanted to share that privilege with others.
In the film, we also see certain places that could seem banal, but that are historically important, like Dar Shabab, these houses of youth, where we see these youth learning music with Allal, with one of the members of Nas Riwan. There's also the Théâtre Municipal, the municipal theater, that also appears in Ali Essafi's film Before the Dying of the Light, with this commentary at the end, that at a certain point it fell under the grip of the Ministry of Interior, but remained a site of protest until it was closed and destroyed, etc. I was interested in rewatching both of your movies in the kinds of echoes across time, and I wanted to ask Ali, what is your memory of when you first watched Trances, and what that meant, and also because, and I mentioned this also because there is a moment in your film, in Before the Dying of the Light, where there's this little animation with 4 film posters that appear to fill places on a wall, and one of them is Aliyam Aliyam. So there, Maanouni is in that pantheon in a way. But so maybe say something about your relation to the older generation of filmmakers, and also these kinds of spaces, the theatre and the Dar Shabab and all of that.
Well, actually, I was one of those young people in Morocco, in Berkane, in the small city where I grew up. The only place, interesting place in that time was this yacht house, Darshab, where I start playing les échecs, chess, and play chess, and playing theater, and meeting girls, which was because we don't have public places in this small city, so it was kind of a place of I think in all Morocco in that time it was the place for people from the poor and the worker class like me. So well, Ahmed knows that I'm fan of Trance for me is the model. It's what I used to say. It was the only in my memory when I start to make film. It was the only Moroccan documentary I have in my memory, because we didn't have access to the other documentaries. But Trances was for me like finally he took me inside, close to my heroes, to my models, Nas Riwan, which was the same thing for all. I grew up buying in the popular market, small books like 10 cents, with the words of the songs of Nasr Riwan. And so Nasr Riwan was our identity, and Ahmed's film put us inside in and close of this world, which we didn't know. Really, we know the universe of Nasr Riwan, but the film took us more closer than. And what was, if I may add this thing, what I learned and what is really important in the Nasr Riwan phenomena, which Ahmed's film showed, that for the first time we had, thanks to the colonization, who built this worker class neighborhood in Casablanca, or he didn't build because it was, how do you say, Qasdir, tu vois, c'était, it was...
Shantytown.
Shantytown.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. In this neighborhood, the French colonization brought Moroccan from everywhere to work in the industry there. So thanks to this, we had for the first time a band with this is what the film show also, who came from a different origins, different cultures, Amazigh, Berbers, Arabs like Larbi Batma from the Casablanca plains, and because each one came from a different background, they succeed to make, for the first time in our contemporary history, a Moroccan identity. I think Nasr Riwan became the new Moroccan identity, which we didn't have really before them. And Ahmed's film showed this very well.
Just as a commentary on what you were just saying, this still from Derkaoui's About Some Meaningless Events, where we see Mohammed Zafzaf, a major Moroccan writer from that same period. And I should say About Some Meaningless Events is a film where part of the film is this kind of street microphone asking people what should be. We're trying to figure out what Moroccan cinema should be, right? Like what do you expect from a Moroccan cinema? And so we have Sakina from Jijilala saying no one makes films that are close to people. We have Zafzaf. There's also ordinary, like not public figures who speak in the film, but here's Zafzaf saying, I don't want Moroccan cinema to look like Egyptian cinema, which seemed to be an important point at the time, both for cinema and for music, because arguably, and it comes up in Trances, the musicians of Nasr Riwan are saying people were so enamored with the music, with Egyptian music, with Kulthum, with all of that, and we tried to come up with a sound that was more specifically ours, in a way that was not just imitative of these other existing traditions and products. This is an article by that appeared in the journal Integral that was run by Mohamed Malihi and Mustafa Nisaburi, so a painter and a writer in the 70s. And this is an article by Nisaburi on Derkaoui's film, on About Some Meaningless Events, and it's titled For a Dynamics of Collective Cinema. And I just wanted to show it because this notion of the collective making was so crucial at the time. This is people looking at artworks in the exhibition that the Casablanca group of artists made outdoors in Jam Al Fna in the late 60s in Marrakesh. These are
Casablanca. And Casablanca.
And in Casablanca. That's right. And these are images from your film, Ali, before the dying of the light. And I'll show some more as a way to maybe encourage you to say anything else you'd like to say about what's on screen or about this collective dynamic and how you see it today. What does it mean for you today beyond, the melancholy of, not having lived it or seen it or having access to it? We have a question from the audience that says to both of you, if you had the means to make, let me read it exactly. It's from Yusuf Busta. If you were given the resources to make a documentary in Morocco about a contemporary subject, what would you choose? Ali, you start, or Ahmed, whoever is ready.
Ahmed. Honor to the pioneers. Yalla.
No, I am I'm following closely, all the movements of young artists who try to just make Moroccan culture survive. I have this annoying feeling that our culture is either inside or outside Morocco is not present enough. The young generation is making really huge efforts to. There are very singular and interesting collective movements. I know them in Casablanca, in Marrakesh, to say the least, and they should be. I think they should be made known, and thus, to have people just aware that our culture is there. Not that I want openness to other cultures, but Moroccan culture should be known inside, or creators should be known inside Morocco and outside. And that's, I would be very much interested in such a project. If you want, Ali, we can make some collective work on this.
I'm usually with collective movement, usually. So thank you. I would learn a lot with you, I'm sure. Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. I think we are lucky because in the last years we had a new generation of filmmakers interested in documentary film, and some of them are doing really interesting works on about different thema in Morocco. But for myself, if I have to do in a film today really about young people in Morocco, for me it should be about education and about the problems with to have access to the education. This is, I think, the major problem right now in Morocco, and in the same time it's really marginalized, and we don't put out the light and all our efforts to save the education problem, because, well, we can't do nothing if the education collapsed. So many young people want to learn and want to go forward and follow their studies, but it's too difficult for people from the class from where I come. For example, people from the same class today, for them it's quite impossible to have the chance I had to study and to have a grant to go in France outside to follow my studies. And it was what really saved my life. I mean the education. So this is for me the A subjects and the A history I want to one day maybe to work on.
But it's really mainly also about having these these works, either documentaries or in cinema or theater or music, shown, and if they are not shown, if they are not if they do not circulate, it just means that our culture is not ready to be exchanged, to be shared. I know, especially young filmmakers or women filmmakers. We know we lost last year one of the greatest Moroccan documentary filmmaker, Dalila Al-Nadr, who did a tremendous work, and unfortunately these films are not shared in Morocco, or outside Morocco. And things I know personally many young filmmakers, and it's very hard for them. And let's please together join our efforts and make these films being shown and circulates. And I'm really, sometimes I am furious because I feel that I have read, I told this lately to Omar about this American writer who wrote in a book called Le Commandeur des Croyants, that Morocco, Walter Bay, yeah, Morocco is a non-idea producing land, and that's make me furious, And if our culture is not shared, thus we give the such person the right to say such stupidity.
That's true, because we need first to valorize our culture if we want to make people attracted by it. So this is, like you say, Ahmed, our problem, and we have to together to make the effort to just to give access to the young people for those archives. It's what we are doing with actually we already start with what I call Bouinani Club around Bouinani archives. It's an NGO right now, and we are starting a lot of events with the help of some grants to show films in different areas in Morocco. Especially it's my intention to show the films for young people in the universities, school, Dar Shabab youth house, and it's I think we are going to make a lot of things together because around Bouinani archives, it doesn't mean the archives of Bouinani, but it's just a small family who want to open, and for the other people who need to who want to help, who want to work, who want to valorize our culture. So I'm sure in sooner we will have meetings, Ahmed, inside those events.
And
Sure.
Omar, and Omar too.
Omar is a part of this Guanani club already. So
Love the idea of
linked
the
with.
Guanani Club.
I see some questions.
We have questions. We have very little time left, so I will try and let's see. For instance, what role do you think modern diffusion of media, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, plays in sharing Moroccan culture? Could this be a way to present and preserve authentic Moroccan culture and art? If you want to say something about that, and I will give you 2 or 3 at the same time so people hear them and you can choose what you respond to, since we don't have a lot of time left. Hamid Heitou says, listening to you all and having read a lot about Moroccan cinema, I concluded that cinema and art in general in Morocco has been, or maybe still is, a victim of politics, not only by politicians, but also artists who were not able to liberate themselves of the political dimension of art. And one last one I will read maybe is from Mehdi. What do you think is missing right now in the youth artistic scene of Morocco to improve and have an authentic voice, especially when we are confronted with a huge wave of globalization and standardization of artistic vision and the impact of Hollywood? So 3 very different questions, but if you feel like sharing any thoughts.
And I have seen also, Omar, if I may, on my screen, another question interesting for people who don't know Moroccan context. It's important. The question was why the cinema of the 70s in Morocco is so special. So I just want, because this is an important information, all this period, the artistic creation of this period are special because it's about the first post-colonial generation, first of all. So it's the masterpiece of our contemporary history of art. And maybe it's the first one in our history, because before the colonization we didn't have representative works in all arts, like visual art or theater or literature. So the 70s and this artistic and cultural pioneers are the masterpiece of our history, I wanted to say. It's why it's special.
We'll take that as an answer to this still from Derkaoui's movie. Go ahead, Ahmed.
The idea what is needed to make Moroccan culture circulate or being shown and seen and discussed and written about, etc., is maybe it's we have a lack of passeur. I don't know how you translate that, Omar. I'm not talking
intermediaries or people who make work circulate.
Yeah, these because you have, it's you have to the works of art, cinema, literature, art, etc., has to be carried, through passion by these passeurs to make to make them still living. It's not just being part of let's say, in a filmography of our country. That Trances, for instance, was produced by Isa Genini in 1981 and restored by Martin Scorsese in 2007. The films have to be shown. And again, I have really a tremendous thank you to say to Scorsese's World Cinema Project for making these two films alive, keeping them alive. And that's what I hope for every piece of art in Morocco, Moroccan art, to be carried, to be transmitted, to be shared in Morocco, in universities, as Ali said, in schools, etc., discussed, and also outside Morocco. We need that. We have creators, we have filmmakers, we have writers, we have painters, etc. But if their work is not carried, is not passed on and shared, they are not alive.
I just want to answer Ahmed, if I may, to this question in another way. For me, what young artists in Morocco need, it's what all young artists need in every country, is first to be linked with their background and their history, because what I learned in outside Morocco when I was studying, what I really learned, and what I found really important, is that everything in science or in art is about accumulation. So if it's about on the accumulation,
you can say.
I mean, yeah, accumulation of knowledge and creation from a generation and another. I mean, it's a very interesting, as I made when I was student. I knew of everything about the history of cinema in the world, the history of art in the world. But if we are not linked with our proper history, I am sure that we cannot produce something really new to share with the universe and with the rest of the world. So I'm sure that this lack of memory in the new generation of artists is putting us, comme on dit, tourner en rond, to circle in yeah, you understand.
Yes.
So this I mean, young artists, we need to ask for this history and for what happened, and they don't have to I mean, to stay like this, saying that we didn't have any history, we didn't have any models, we didn't have any pioneers. We have a history, we have an old history, and we have a modern history, and young artists must make all the efforts to have access to this history, which is difficult, I know, but we can do it.
We have to leave it at this. Thank you very much to you both.
Thank you, Omar.
And
thank you to Mizna. Thank you.
To Mizna, to the festival, and to all of you who have been listening to us. We hope we got to at least some of the questions. And good evening, afternoon to everyone.